Hello and welcome to another episode of the Daily Seeds of Flourishing. Today I'm going to talk about a series of books and I suppose a publisher that have had a big impact on the depth of my reading over the years. The publisher is Routledge. If you're not familiar with them, they're a British multinational publisher founded in 1863. By George Routledge, or Routledge, however you want to say that. I suppose it's, depends how you pronounce root or route. Specialises in providing academic books, journals and online resources. So over the years, the thing I've probably focused in on most by them is their classic series. And back when I lived in the UK, there was a bit of a running joke between me and a friend who used to hang out. I'd hang out with them on a Sunday and we'd go and visit various bookshops. And whenever we went into the bookshop, we'd always track down what we jokingly call the Wall of Routledge, which was all of the Routledge Classic books sort of arranged and nice and neatly in a couple of bookshelves. And what attracted both of us to the books, not only the books themselves, but just these covers. So this is the new covers, which I'm not such a big fan of, but I really like the old style covers. There's just something about them. Actually, that one's a new one. So these ones. And over the years, I've acquired a number of these books to the point now where now I'm living in Nova Scotia. Whenever I visit the UK, I always make a point each year of buying one of these books. And so recently, obviously, I've not been able to visit. So for the last couple of years, I've just been buying, as a tradition, I still sort of buy them, but I've been buying them online. And so I've still got to decide what this year's classic is going to be. But I just thought I'd walk through some of these and just flag up some of the ones that I do have. So I do have this, the culture industry. Is it going to let me in yet? So the nice thing about the site as well is it gives you a quick overview of the book, very simple overview. But what's nice is obviously these books they're reprints, but the originals are old books, most of them, if not all of them. And so it's fairly easy to find summaries of the books online, either on Wikipedia, because they're quite well-known books by the authors. The downside with the series, as with any historical book, is obviously some of the thoughts over time didn't pan out quite as well as expected, but it is interesting to read the original works through the lens at the time, which is something that always fascinates me, is try and sort of set yourself back into that era and try and get at least a rough idea of what's going on. Obviously you're always going to be vulnerable to presentism, like we're living in a current era, and I'm looking at works that are 20, 30, 50, 100 years old, and so it's very difficult for me to take off my 21st century lens when reading certain works. But I find a lot of these just fascinating to read. Let me just scroll through this. I might actually start off at the other end and just work from the bottom, really. So I have a couple of these Lorenz ones, so Man Meets Dog and King Solomon's Ring, and clearly again there's stuff that Lorenz gets up to with animals that would be rather ethically unsound nowadays, where he's obviously catching wild birds and keeping them. And there's one thing I think in King Solomon's Ring, he just generally talks about animal. He's an animal behaviourist basically, or wasn't. He's not alive anymore. He's an animal behaviourist, and so this book, I suppose, is him telling his different stories within that area of study. This one is specifically about dogs, and it's interesting to read of all the different shenanigans he gets up to with various dogs he's owned. So I did thoroughly enjoy reading these two, if they are a little bit dated. Another author, and again, with an author, an occult author like Yeats, some of the ideas at the time have been changed because they've been looking at maybe through different lenses or just a different approach. But I find, that the particular area that the three books that I have that focuses on is around the period of, the Elizabethan age and the Renaissance. It is very interesting to read her takes on, the intersection between the occult and people that were prevalent in the science community, and obviously other key esoteric figures. So, it's her understanding at the time she wrote the book of how a lot of Western scientific thinking grew out of occult origins. And there's references to John Dee. There's a separate book as well that focuses really on Giordano Bruno. And there's another book that I have, which we might see in a moment, which is the Rosicrucian Enlightenment as well. This might be this year's purchase. I'm still trying to decide. What else have we got here? Oh, this is really interesting. A General Theory of Magic by Moss. I think he's more famous for a book called The Gift. I haven't read this one by Lorenz, which is one on aggression. There's also some of these which I've got by different publishers as well. What else have we got? It's a shame you can't order these by author, because it'd be a lot easier for me to go through. I have this, which is pretty heavy going. I don't think I've made my way through that yet. Oh yeah, there's the Rosicrucian Enlightenment. Yeah, these are definitely, these three books by Yeats I mentioned, and definitely worth a read. Yeah, at the moment this year it's a toss-up between either Wittgenstein or the Husserl book. I have this. I think this was the first book that I bought in this series. And also Kant's Moral Law. I didn't realise Dennett had one published in this, actually. Yeah, I just love these covers. I I keep meaning to buy a Midgley one as well, but I'm not sure which one I would probably enjoy the most. Again, the nice thing with this, if I hadn't mentioned it already, is because these are quite old books. They're quite it's quite easy to read a summary of them online. So just know what you're letting yourself in for. So yeah, this one, Fear of Freedom, Adorno, The Culture Industry. Doesn't look like all of them are here because there's other ones I've got. So look over on my shelf. Albert Einstein's Relativity was one that was in the series. From the Sane Society, which is a good one to read in combination with Fear of Freedom. Herbert Reed's To Hell with Culture. I didn't see that in here. Yeah, it's a shame you can't really, because the author search in here, this is, sadly their search is lacking. You would expect here to be able to drill down through this, and you just can't, which is super annoying on here. But oops, back to here, just seeing if any other ring any bells in my mind. Oh, Being a Nothingness by Sartre. I didn't see that anywhere on there, which is interesting. Yeah, it's a bit difficult. I should have bought a load of them over, actually. It would have been easier to go through rather than me looking on my bookshelf. I wasn't expecting, I suppose some of them have just been, to some degree discontinued. They're just not available anymore. So that might explain why it's not showing in here some of the ones that I have on my bookshelf. So I have a modest wall of Routledge myself. And I just was going to bring up this so when I was last in the UK, so probably was as way back as 2018 maybe. Wow. I checked out the wall of Routledge at Blackwell's. Why is it so there's nothing to see here? There we go. Yeah, in Blackwell's in Oxford, and they have this like philosophy pit in there, which for want of a better word. So if you go into the lower level of Blackwell's, the philosophy section has its own area, which is what's the word I'm looking for? It is literally, you can see it from within the bottom area, but you go down a separate set of steps, and it's its own little contained area. So where the top of the bookshelf is here is the actual floor of the level. So it's like a, can't think of the right word here for that, but it's down in its own little area below the level of the floor that it forms part of. And so this is their wall of Routledge, and probably the photograph doesn't do it any justice, but when I saw this, it made me very happy, and had big feelings of flourishing when I was going through. Now I didn't actually purchase anything from here, interestingly enough. I believe I'd already got one from another bookshelf, because we only visit a bookstore because we only visited Oxford for a couple of days, and I did buy something in here. I bought a history of philosophy book, which I did have on the shelf. Another one where I've got to turn round. Oh yeah, Brian McGee's History of Philosophy, which is quite a nice DK book that he did many years ago. So yeah, so I just thought I'd talk a little bit today about Routledge Classics and their part in my Flourishing. My album recommendation for today, and I know I missed the one yesterday, but today's one is The Seer by Swans. If you haven't checked out Swans, they're worth checking out. The only thing I will say with them, this album in particular, but other albums as well, is the albums can be quite long, some of them. So this is a 2-hour album nearly. So you need to set aside and listen to the whole album. It's part of a trilogy. The first album of the trilogy. The other two albums are To Be Kind and The Glowing Man. But well worth checking out. There's also an interesting. So the main person behind Swans. And I'm going to have to... Oh, there we go. Michael Gyra also has a solo project called Angels of Light. So if you want to listen to examples of his work that are a little less heavy and intense, then Angels of Light is a good route to go down. But I do enjoy a bit of Swans. So that's my album recommendation for this episode. Thanks for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in the next episode.